Hmm. Hi guys, can you hear me? Hmm.
Yeah, hi, how are you?
Professor.
Hi,
Oh,
Siver. Oh, good. It says my audio is disconnected. Okay, how's everybody doing?
I feel like this day is going by very slow. So that means this week is gonna go by pretty slow. I don't look forward to this.
Siver, what about you?
man. I kind of can relate to what Jasmine said. I feel like I've been trying to. I've been having zero kind of. I've had bad luck today with my productivity. I feel like my thought process has been kind of like moving through molasses. So it's like I'm trying to like my body is ready to do the work, but my mind is kind of slowing it down a little bit. So that's kind of, kind of like what Jasmine said. It's just a slow week so far, slow start to the day.
For me, it's the opposite. My mind is always racing, but my body is not
Yeah.
always there to support my racing mind. Uh, okay. Why are you nervous, Victoria? What's doing with you?
My brother had accident today at work, so
Oh, what
it's
kind of an
not.
accident?
Um, so he work on he's truck driver, and the person attacked him, and he tried to like I don't know kill my brother or something. So they called the police, and now I'm waiting. He's coming home because I'm nervous what happened next. So
Is he okay? Is he hurt?
he's okay. He's just scratched his face a little bit, but he probably just hurt
Mm,
mental more. So
yeah,
not good today, but people got crazy sometimes. So
especially now, absolutely.
especially now, yeah, it's day what we live right now. So
Well, you may want to be his therapist for the day.
yeah, I'm just waiting him home. I was thinking like I hope I can make class today because I don't know my hands shaking because I was scary what happened next.
How
But
old
not.
is he? An older brother or a younger
Oh yeah,
brother?
he is older. He's older, but I think I take care about him more.
Oh, I can relate to that. I have a daughter who is younger than her brother, and she's the one takes care
Yeah,
of everything.
our mom live in Ukraine, so I'm responsible for
Mm.
this. It's like
Do you speak Ukrainian too, or just Russian?
yeah, Ukrainian, Russian. Yeah, I speak both.
Fantastic. Such an interesting language for somebody who speaks Russian. It sounds a little funny.
Yeah, I know. I know. I was thinking some everybody who speak Russian understand Ukrainian because I would think it's they so familiar, but now I know it's not really.
No, no, not at all. I mean, you have so many different words that are not
It's more
related.
familiar with Poland, I think, than
Hmm. Hmm.
Russia. But
I think reading is much easier than actually listening to the Ukrainian speak, at least
maybe
for me. But
I
I think
prefer
I,
Russian.
me too. Well, I think the funniest language is Belarusian. That is just like Russian, but it has all the wrong R's in the places where O's are
Yeah,
supposed to be. It's
I
just
know.
hilarious.
I was listening some song in Belarus language, and it was oh my god.
Yes. Okay. All right. Enough of chit chat. Let's get to work. Okay. Where are we? Here we go. Right. Okay. Today we are doing the observations. This is important because you guys, most of you, I hope, will be doing observations. We'll leave that point for Thursday. We'll spend the entire class again basically finalizing your observation plans. We'll do a couple of exercises today to help us get through this important milestone because as of that Thursday, you will have 10 days to collect your data, unless some of you may have already started doing this. But again, remember, I need to approve your observation plan so that you're not in a position of doing something that's not going to work. Not that I always know, but I can guess better perhaps than you whether the kinds of things that you want to observe actually are observable. Okay. And the funny thing is, like I told you before, I like the book. I was very enthusiastic when I switched to that, but this particular section, this chapter 6, is not great, I have to say. So, one of the things that I will do, I haven't done it yet because I've been looking at the various articles, is to post a couple of actual articles on observation, on how psychologists do that. So there's a good one on uh, observing how parents of really young babies, 5 to 10 month old babies, read to them about numbers. So, I mean, we don't really know how children acquire numerosity, that is, how they learn how to count. So, it's a very interesting short article on uh, reading activity between the parent and the baby with the numerosity. So, uh, of course, like I said, it's really nice if you could write something along the same lines. It's not easy because it takes a lot of practice, but it's going to be a good example for you to look at. So I'll post that one. And the other one has to do with the way people behave at the dentist's office. A lot of people actually are very scared of going to the dentist, mm, sometimes for good reasons. In the spirit of good nature, because you guys are all tired and uh, nervous about various things, I'll tell you a very short story, again from my life. When I was a graduate student in Moscow, a tooth broke. Well, that happens. So I go to the dentist there. It's completely free. The dentist is in this happy guy, and he says, "Ah, that's just a tooth. We'll pull it out." And I said, "Well, is it gonna hurt?" He says, "Nah, just for a few seconds." So 20 minutes later, he is covered in my blood. I'm covered in my blood. He finally pulled it out. No anesthesia, by the way, just to let you know.
That
So
is terrible.
this is terrible. Exactly.
It
So
hurts just hearing you.
yes, I was traumatized for a very long time. And when I came to this country and I had to go to the dentist, I was like, ah, no, Emma.
My
And
mouth just thinking about.
exactly. Thank God in those days we didn't have cell phones to take a picture. It was lovely, a lovely experience. Anyway,
Miss
so there,
Secarino,
yes,
I'm
Jess.
sorry. I already hate dentists, so now hearing your story, that's like no help.
No, but Jasmine, remember this was a Russian dentist 35 years ago, so you're fine, you're good. But this one is just an observation of how people behave when they're waiting to be seen by a dentist. So it's not really being in the dentist's chair; it's in the reception room. So it's not a problem. But it will give you an idea how observations are conducted by actual researchers. Okay, great. So going back to our favorite flow chart, you don't need to have it now out because it's the same. We are still in this area of looking at the design of the study. So today we're doing observations. We studied surveys and interviews last week, and I recall that there may potentially be circumstances that would sort of motivate you to do a survey. Now, if this is the case, I heard from one member of one group that potentially is interested in doing a survey. We have very little time, so it needs to be decided now if that's what you want to do. And let's see, chapter 7, chapter 8. So in a couple of weeks, we will look at the experiments. Now, we will only look at the simplest experiments there are, just because you will have a whole lab course on experiments once you do your stats 266. Then you can go either in 330 learning and behavior. That's with pigeons, if anybody who is interested in sort of animal research. We are, perhaps I told you before, we are one of the very few colleges in this country that still has an animal facility. In this case, pigeons still. Or you can do 330, which is a experimental psychology, cognition, and perception. I teach it a lot. And we also have two more. We have 330 experimental social, and we have 335, which is experimental developmental. If you like little babies and children, that's the lab for you. Over there in one of these four labs, the approaches are different, but they all are experimental. So that's what we will do when we get to, must be chapter 10. I think it is chapter 10. Let me check. I have the book in front of me. Yeah, Introduction to Simple Experiments. Perfect. And in terms of your research flow, you are just about to start conducting your study, which means you will collect your data. And can somebody guess what's going to happen once the data are collected? What's going to happen in this box? Well, once you have the data, what do you do with the data?
Analyze it.
Yay! Yes, excellent. Yes, we will be analyzing data. Now remember, in the framework of this course, I don't expect you to know anything. We'll learn a little bit about descriptive statistics. So I will provide a way for you guys to do very simple data analysis, which I already told you is going to be a chi-square. So all you have to do is, once you have your four numbers, you will plug them into that Excel, and voila, you will have the results. Perfect. So, and basically, once we get to the experiments, that's chapter 10, we will have, I think, one more. I'm sure I have the schedule. Yeah, we will also do one more chapter, chapter 11, more on experiments. And we are done in terms of content. So we will be skipping a couple of, well, we'll skip chapter 9, which is multivariate correlations, because I don't think you'll ever need that. And then we don't really need to look at the stuff after chapter 11, complex experiments, single case experiments, pseudo, and so on. All of those are advanced methods that are not that important for your introduction to psychology. Okay, all right. So how do we decide what to observe? Because that's what observation is. In fact, you know, if you are a kind of person that sort of likes people watching, that's a perfect method for you. Those who travel, either in this country or abroad, I travel a lot because I teach and present my work in different countries. You sit in the cafe, people are going by. It's a fun activity to see what they do, especially in a country that you're not familiar with. Sometimes you find the methods quite, the behavior quite bizarre, or even not just bizarre, but dangerous. Perhaps some of you heard the story of a Norwegian couple who was here in New York. It was like maybe 2 or 3 years ago. The weather was nice. They were in the village. They went to a restaurant, and they had a baby with them. The baby was in a stroller, but the baby was small. It wasn't even a toddler. So the baby was asleep in that carriage, and they left the carriage in front of the window where they were sitting. So they actually kept an eye on the carriage. So they were arrested because it was, apparently, according to our laws, uh, endangerment of a minor or something like that. And that's what Norwegians do. They just leave the children and dogs and whatever in front of the cafe. That's their lifestyle. I've spent a lot of time in Norway, so I've seen that. So if you like people watching, that's a great method. We often also use observation as the first stage for the next level experiment, the next level, not necessarily experiment, the next level study. So sometimes if you want to create a meaningful survey, they actually have to observe what people do, and then you can come up with questions. And that's why it's so hard to find good articles on observation, because it's so rare that people can just do an observation as a standalone study. But like I said, there are a couple of good ones. So what's the advantage? Well, the best advantage is that you don't have to talk to these people. You don't have to ask them what they think, what they do, what they believe. All of that is irrelevant, because as long as you can observe the behavior and make the connection between the variables, right? And the behavior is going to be your response variable. You're in business. You don't need to articulate anything, and especially useful for participants like children, right? You can't always ask a child why he or she is doing something. And many actually psychologists believe that doing an observation may be even more useful than doing a survey, although surveys are the staple of psychology. Just because, remember all the problems that come with answering questions. We have response set, we have acquiescence, we have yay saying, nay saying, and stuff like that. We also have social desirability, when people figure out what we are asking them and they play either with us or against us. You don't get that in an observation, because it's usually a public place. People behave normally. Okay, so deciding to observe is an interesting point. I told you a story about an observation conducted in 1970s in a public restroom. Yes, it's a public restroom, but there are ethical restrictions on what can be done. So when you are thinking about your assignment 2, I hope you are, you've got to decide to observe something, not only because it's ethical, but also because it's easy to observe. It doesn't require a lot of specialized sort of thinking of why people are doing something like that. So if it is something, a kind of behavior that you will then need to extrapolate from, that may not be the best variable that you can choose. So, and almost always, well, now there is an interesting point. We have cell phones and people actually talk on cell phones. But generally, when we are observing behavior, we are observing nonverbal stuff, gestures, postures, the way people, you know, sit in terms of their arrangements, how they do things in group and not in group. And under these circumstances, people may not, they definitely are not aware of the kinds of these nonverbal behaviors that they're engaging in. It's just normal for us to use gestures when we speak, right? So a lot of assignment 2 examples from the previous classes had to do with cell phones. And I'm sure many of you have experienced that. You are on the bus in those days when we could be on the bus, and there is somebody yapping in the back, yada, 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 on the phone, and everybody can hear it. Everybody is involved, so to speak, in the conversation of that person, and that's extremely annoying. So one could observe that kind of behavior. That's kind of, it's verbal because the person is talking. So with the technology that we have these days, there are new opportunities for us to do that. Now, the good thing is that observation is very cheap. It doesn't cost anything. Again, good things and bad things about smartphones. If you're observing a behavior, in the old days, you would have to have like a book and a piece of paper and then pretend that you are sort of scribbling something in the book, because otherwise people will notice that you're writing things. And now it's so easy. You're holding your phone and you just clicking, 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 because you're counting a certain type of behavior. But so economically, it's cheap. but in terms of time, it's expensive. So that's why one of the things that I would like you not to do is not to observe something that is time consuming, because each of you will have to do 10 observations, giving us 30 observations per group. And if it's something that happens rarely, once in 15 minutes, you don't want to do that. You want to get something where you can collect your data relatively fast. My rule of thumb is you need to be able to collect your 10 observations in no more than an hour. So it has to be something that's relatively common, something that won't require you to spend your life doing that, which of course I don't want you to do. Okay, oops, before we do that. So let's practice. So I'm going to show you, and Victoria will recognize that. I will show you a short cartoon. It's Russian, but it doesn't really have a lot of words. It will involve two characters, a bunny and a wolf. Think of like Tom and Jerry kind of stuff. And what I'm asking you to do while you watch this cartoon is use your notebook and put a check mark each time you see an act of violence, aggression. And I'm not giving you a definition, what I mean by that. No operational definition, whatever you consider aggressive. Okay? So if you guys are ready, let me make sure that the sound is on, although it doesn't really matter for this. So each time you see an act of violence or aggression between the two characters, put a tick in your notebook. Where is the sound? Okay, so it's not playing the sound, but it doesn't really matter.
It was playing the sound before you pressed the button.
Let me try to stop and start it again and see if that helps. Okay, no sound. Okay, we have to stop because quality is getting worse. Okay, so guys, in the chat, type in the number of um, the acts of violence or aggression that you have calculated in that cartoon. Okay, Jasmine says 11. Rita says 7. 8, 11. Okay, numbers are slightly different. Uh-huh. Okay, 8, 6. Uh-huh. So the question is why the numbers are slightly different. What? So, for example, when the wolf is getting hit by a pail in the well, is that an act of violence?
Yes.
Well, don't you think that uh, violence requires sort of agency? That is, wasn't it an accident? Vanessa is right. Yes. So do we define violence? Okay, Rita says I didn't. Not on purpose, right? So perhaps if we say that we will consider acts of violence only if they meant to be such, right? Uh-huh. So when the wolf hits the goose, that's an act of violence, right? How about this piece of machinery, whatever it's doing, that is catching those chickens into wired boxes? Is that an act of violence? Okay, so that is, these are all important questions that one has to address, because otherwise, as you could see in our little demo, that the numbers can be different from 5 to 11. Okay, the book has 3 illustrations for you. And these are frequency claims. Most of the time, we will try to make it an association claim. So, example number 1 is this paper by Mel and colleagues. That's actually a paper that came after that, a companion paper to this one. And I want you to pay attention to the fact that it was published in Science. Now, Science is our premier journal. Apart from medical journals, this is the most important journal, not only in this country, but in the world. So to have your article published in Science is a very high recognition of the quality of the paper. So here's the question, if you guys remember it from the textbook or in general, what do you think? What is the answer to this question? Are women really more talkative than men? Jeremiah says no. Jasmine says yes. Yes, no, yes, no. I see you guys all over the place, right? So the only way one could try, um, yes, Seaver thinks he remembers it being the correct answer from the textbook. So this is what they did in this particular study. I mean, how do you measure how much people talk? I mean, how many words they say? I mean, it's not that easy, right? So, and then this is 2007, that's the publication time. The study was conducted even before that. So they had those little digital tape recorders that they distributed to their participants. And they were programmed, I think that's the way it was, to go every hour for 30 seconds and record whatever is being said during this time. And we'll talk about it in a minute once we look. The difference was only slight. That's what Jeremiah says. And then they collected, and obviously the recorders were distributed between men and women equally. And then the researchers collected the recorders, they pulled the data off the recorders, and they used sophisticated artificial intelligence analysis to actually calculate the number of words people would say over a period of the day. Remember, every number of minutes for 30 seconds, these were the recordings. And that allowed them, this is an observation, right? Because there was no second variable. Um, there was only this variable in terms of whether there is a gender effect in the volume of speech. Okay. Um, Everyday context, nothing special. And here is the design. So there were actually 6 samples. Jasmine, you appreciate that. 5 were in the US and 1 in Mexico. The numbers were different. Sometimes they could only get a few people. Remember, this is very time consuming because you have to distribute these recorders. Mostly these were young folks, guys of your age. And the data were collected over a period of 6 years. So that's a huge project. And the number of days that they wore those recorders varied from 2 to 10. And as you can see, I said every hour, I'm wrong, every 12 and a half minutes, the recorder would come on and record what people were saying. So the results, Jeremiah is correct. Turns out that on average, women were saying about 16,000 words a day. That's a lot, right? But men were saying 15 and a half. And in terms of statistical differences, it was not significant. So, hey, ladies, we are vindicated. We are not more of a chatterboxes than guys are. But there is some interesting cultural differences in terms of obviously the people in Mexico were chattering in Spanish, not in English. So there is an interesting continuation of that study that I'm not telling you about right now. The second example, perhaps you remember from the textbook, is parents' behavior. My brothers are more talkative than me. Well, Rita, we need to record your brothers and you, and then do uh, a comparison. It's what you're saying is impressionistic. That's not enough. As scientists, we need to test your hypothesis. So the second one is the parents that attend hockey games. That's from Canada, uh, where the idea that the researchers had to do with the general knowledge or belief in Canada. Hockey, of course, is their national sports, just like football here. The idea was that parents actually are quite aggressive. So they are on the bleachers, they watch the game, and they curse and scream at the opposite team. So that's the belief. So these people decided, Boca and his colleagues, to actually test that. And obviously, this is public behavior. They positioned themselves in on the bleachers among the parents, and they would do an observation by listening to, how often parents would comment on children's behavior and the kinds of comments that parents um, would say. Now, I used to be a soccer mom. Both my kids played soccer. So I'm familiar with that. So they observed 69 games. I think it was in Toronto. And note, these are the numbers. Once they finished the observation, observing 69 games, they took all the comments that parents made during these games and they calculated their how negative or positive they were. And it turned out that 64 of these comments were very positive. Only 4 were negative, and the rest, 32, were not comments of the type that you could judge them as either negative or positive. So this popular press story about parents who are aggressive and go after the opposite team was not true until this study was conducted. And the third one is also a naturalistic observation in people's homes. This is very labor intensive because what they did, they uh, placed the cameras in people's entry holes in their houses, because what they wanted to know is to see how children react to their parents who come back from work. Now, the child is at home after school with maybe another parent or babysitter, whatever, and then the parent comes home from work. What will the child do? Now, you can imagine that this is not a cheap or a quick observation. So they had to recruit only 30 families, and the cameras were on during the time that the parent was expected to come home. So one idea was that children are going to actually greet parents happily because they haven't seen them the entire day. Or would that be a gender difference? If a mother comes home versus a father, will children respond more to the mother than the father? And it was not an easy study, like I said. They recorded these observations. There were 44 episodes that they could evaluate for quality. So you can imagine a child coming out to the entry hall to greet the parent or not coming out if the child is engrossed in a video game or homework or whatever. And they found that out of those that they could qualify, there were more positive greetings for mothers, almost 60%, than for fathers, only 44%. Again, an observation study, which was done from the videotapes uh, taken at people's homes. If we think about types, not that it really matters to us that much, but you can think of three types that are presented here. So casual observation is the one that you do before you do the formal observation or systematic observation. So you just want to know if there is that type of behavior. So if kids never come out into the entry hall, then there's nothing to observe. There's nothing to, um, did they expect the children to act like dogs? um, well, they expected some kind of interaction because that's human, right? Not uh, always coming and wagging the tail the way dogs do, but some kind of interaction. So casual observation means you have no categories in mind. You just looking what's going on. Versus systematic observation, which is what you will be doing, where you already have an idea of what kinds of behaviors you're going to observe. So you have what we call a list of categories that you we'll talk about some examples later that you will use to check people's behavior against. There's another one that is very interesting, not that we are able to do that as a class project, called participant observation. It's the observation that happens when you join a group. So, for example, I mean, there are a lot of people who have motorbikes and they get together in their leather jackets and Harley Davidsons and they drive around. So you could observe their behavior, but it's very difficult if you're sort of standing on the side. Or first of all, they're very fast. Second of all, you don't know what they actually do. So to make such an observation useful, you actually have to be in the group. You have to be accepted by the group. So you either join it or you are already, by definition, are a member of that group. And we have plenty of sort of closed clubs um, or closed ethnicities. We also have closed social groups that try not to be visible. And this is the most interesting stuff because you can't observe them normally. So you can only be there as a member of the group and then report your um, experience. So I read a book of a sociologist who was relatively young. She joined the college, again, doesn't matter which one, as a faculty member. And then she decided that she wanted to know how students sort of live when they are college students. Now, if you're a college student, you may not have enough of knowledge and skills to write about it. But if you're a faculty member, then you're not a college student anymore. So your experience on the opposite side is very different. So what she decided to do, she decided to go undercover, so to speak, and enroll in her own college. And again, details are irrelevant here how she managed to do so. Obviously, the human resources should check, but that's what she did. She got a leave of absence from her position, and she enrolled in that college as a first year student. And she lived in the dorm, and she attended classes, and she interacted with other students. So it's a hilarious story of student life through the eyes of a faculty member. Again, you have to be a participant to get that knowledge. So casual observation, no prearranged system to categorize the behavior or to score it. It's just watch, like I asked you to watch the cartoon and see if you can spot any acts of aggression or violence. But I didn't give you any categories. I didn't say that it has to be intentional to, for example, to count as such. So you guys could count hitting the wolf with a pail as one such act. And again, because it has no system, you're not really looking for anything, you're just testing the grounds. It's only useful when you are at the very early stage of your research. When I said pilot, suggesting to you that you should go and test your ideas, I meant precisely that, casual observation of this behavior without any prearranged categories. Okay. And of course, you can't stop there because it doesn't give us any meaningful data. We actually have to uh, continue to systematic observation to use the data for data analysis and writing our paper later. Again, the participant observation I already mentioned to you with a couple of examples. The person who is the observer is a member of the group that's being observed. Another example that is well known if you want to study what happens in the projects. These are the houses that are supported by the federal uh, money. People don't pay full commercial rate. These are housing projects. Being in one of those is very different from living in the normal sort of house where you rent an apartment or own an apartment. So to get to the actual life in these projects, you have to be a tenant there. So you would need to be a participant to observe that. So usually participant observation is when it is restricted in a certain way. And systematic observation is the next natural step after the casual observation, where now you have the categories. So somebody has defined the aggressive behavior to you with specifications. And you have to apply them consistently, and then you send out your observers like you guys did with the cartoon, and then our team can see whether you counted the same number of aggressive acts as your teammate or not. And if not, we have to go back to the drawing board and get our classification improved so that you can apply these categories consistently and not produce different numbers. So for that, we often have observation checklists, and that is, again, a piece of paper or an app on your phone where you can actually just tap, 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 tap. Things, for example, you would have a category for gender, and you will have male, female, and you'll just tap each time you see a participant, you observe this participant's gender, you tap because you already have this category pre-specified. Maybe you have age, maybe you have anything else that is of interest to your observation. And then something that has to be observable, obviously. You cannot guess what people think and consider that an observation. Okay, so a couple of things that actually came in your quiz 3, which I have to say was good. It was much better than quiz 2, which means that the 45-minute time works much, much better. So we'll stick with that. One of the questions was the difference between observer bias and observer effects. These are different things, right? So observer bias is when you as an observer have some preconceived ideas of what you're trying to observe. So you can imagine that somebody who is a mental health counselor who is conducting an interview with either a job applicant or a patient. That is, the observer knows or is given this information. Then, being a mental health counselor, some people might be biased in terms of how they assess the person, depending on whether the person is designated as a patient or as a job applicant. So you can imagine how this happens. One of the uh, sort of famous historical, not an experiment, but a historical event was the story of Clever Hans. Clever Hans was actually a horse. And that horse was trained, was an extremely bright horse. He was trained to perform various little acts. For example, he can do math, supposedly. So the owner of that horse would take the horse to, the circus or other places, and he would ask a person from the audience to give the horse a math problem. Let's say 7 minus 2, right? And the way the horse would do that is by tapping its hoof. So the horse would go 5 times. So everybody would say, oh my goodness, this horse is fantastic. He could even do little multiplications. He could do 4 by 3. Just think about it. So everybody was saying, wow, such a clever horse, until a guy showed up, Oscar Funkst, who said, we can test the hypothesis whether the horse is actually counting, right? And the way to do that was to make sure that when the person from the audience gives the horse a problem, the horse cannot see that person. So, for example, there would be a piece of cardboard, and that member of the audience will be behind that cardboard, and nobody else is sort of in the vicinity, and they give the horse the problem, 7 minus 2. The horse cannot see the person who's asking the question, and out of a sudden, all the horse's mathematical abilities went through the roof, because the horse was not counting. The horse was watching the nonverbal cues. So you can imagine that if you are watching the horse tapping its hoof by counting, at the point where you are getting to the right answer, you will raise your eyebrows, or you will hold your breath, or you will hunch, you'll do something. And the horse was extremely clever, not in counting, but in observing human behavior, which he knew when, of course, when he was working with his handler, that was easy, right? Because he knew his handler well. But the horse was so talented because it could read all these cues from people the horse never met before. Amazing. And the opposite, so this is the observer bias, when the observer is doing something that affects the observee's behavior. But you can also think of observer effects, and that is when the person who's being observed behaves differently because he or she knows that she's being observed. So the observer bias is from the observer, observer effects is from the person who's being observed. So it's another term for that is reactivity, actually, if you ever noticed that in the textbook. Okay, so before we take a break, when we want to have a good observation, that is, we want to have observations that are reliable. So we have inter-rater reliability that's high, and the observations that are valid. Remember, we have construct validity and potentially statistical validity. We need to do all these things. We need to train our observers. So we give them the exact definition of what we mean by aggression. We have to give them good classification schema, categories that they can use, and we need to use multiple observers. Now, in your case, I don't want you to do the same observation together because we don't really have time for that. So each of you will have to do your own observations. But in the real research, multiple observers, that people who are observing the same participant, then we can compare notes, are critical. And so this is the table from that third example of social interaction between children and parents who come home. And you can see here how difficult it was to make sure that the same tape was watched by two uh, experimenters, two observers, to make sure that they agree. So when it comes to positive behavior, there were 77 instances and only 62 of them were where the two observers agreed. And if you look at the others, here is the one where all behaviors are combined. So positive information, logistic, distraction, negative. This is kappa. This is a type of statistical analysis for coder reliabilities. You can see that there were 131 instances and only 95 of them were the instances where the two observers agreed. Again, because human behavior is so complex. I mean, what do we mean by social interaction to count as such in this? Okay, so we'll skip that. All right, it's 5:32, well, actually 5:33. Let's have a break until 5:40. Is Kim with us? She has a question for me. Kim,
Yes.
I read your suggestion. So you said that you would like to look at wearing masks on train stations, right? Why would you expect to have a gender difference?
I'm not sure. It was just like a rough idea that I was just like thinking of to see if maybe there was a difference.
Oh, good, Vanessa. Okay, let's see. Kim, do you want to talk to me?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that I was off of. I was already unmuted. I'm not
Okay,
sure. I
well,
just.
come back to me, Kim. Vanessa, do you want to ask it in the chat or do you want to talk about it? Yeah, but I don't know. She's not, she hasn't said anything, so I don't know if she's, oops, if she's here.
Yeah, I wanted to ask. Me and my group want to research like
She
joggers.
was. Okay. Vanessa, let's not waste our time. Do you want to ask it out loud or do you want to type it? It doesn't matter for me. I can.
Yeah. Me and my group wanted to like research joggers, and to see like
Vanessa,
if
she can't hear you.
Do you
Like you
want to
have to
unmute
type
yourself,
it. She
Vanessa?
can't hear you. That's why she's not responding.
hello.
We could
Go
hear
ahead,
you,
Vanessa.
but she can't.
Yes, no? Vanessa's talking. Ah, sorry. I'm sorry, guys. Let me check. It's something with my mic. Oh, there we go. Sorry, Vanessa. Kim, were you saying too something? No, Vanessa, say something that I can test my headphones. Yes.
Hello, testing.
Yes, I hear Stephanie. Okay.
There we go.
Kim, say yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good. Okay, so my question was, why would you expect a gender difference in mask wearing behavior?
I'm not sure. It was just kind of like a rough idea I was thinking about, or I was also thinking about maybe like age groups. Maybe like older people are more um it'll be more common to see them, and like teenagers and adolescents may be like a little more rebellious and not wear them.
Okay, that I can relate to. I mean, remember that when you select your topic, it has to be justified, so to speak, right? So one of the things that you have to do is to find some kind of a, hopefully an article or something. So I would be surprised to see gender difference in wearing masks. Age, on the other hand, I think is better because you're right. Perhaps we would expect uh, young people to be more reckless in their behavior than older people.
Yeah.
The question is, how are you, because remember, it has to be categorical. So you have to have two values. You have to have young people and old people. And where are you going to sort of, you can't ask a person, whoa, how old are you?
Right.
So how are you going to sort of separate that?
Um,
Just by looking at them?
kind of, yeah, like maybe like doing like an age group from like, I'm not sure, like 16 to like, I don't know, like 21 or something like that. Just something like along the lines like that.
That I think is easy because you're gonna, I'm sure, find a bunch of teenagers. Will you see a lot of older people on the trains these days?
I don't know, just for the fact that I know that before obviously the pandemic, that was like a big source of like transportation for like people just like get to work either from like yeah,
so perhaps again, Kim, that would be a very quick, hopefully quick pilot. If you would go, of course you don't need to, you would assuming you will be doing the same train station, not different ones, because that's gonna create an additional variable that you don't want. So presumably if you could go, maybe select a good time of the day where kids are not in school or teenagers are not in school, and see if you're even gonna get anything. If that works, if you spend half hour and you see 20 people and you can see that the age matters, then you're in business.
Okay.
So without a pilot, it's very hard to say. Okay, good. Vanessa, now your turn. Sorry for that problem with my mic. Vanessa, are you with us? Oh, I think Vanessa disappeared for a few minutes. Okay, that's all right. Come back to me if you want after we're done with the material. Okay. Anybody else who might have questions, we can either talk about them.
Professor?
Go ahead, Tara.
Hi, I have two quick questions actually.
Go ahead.
One, did I miss the due date for quiz 3?
Yeah, it closed yesterday at 10 p.m.
Would I be able to email you about that, or is there's no exceptions?
Well, you'd have to tell me what happened. There are certain circumstances that I can understand. If you just forgot, then that's not an excuse, unfortunately. So email me and we can discuss that. Go ahead. Ask me the second question.
Also, I'm having difficulty with this assignment, like trying to figure out just by observing somebody, like their age and things like that. Like I'm struggling with that.
Who's your group mate?
Jackie and Norma are in my
Okay.
group.
Norma is here, so why don't you guys chat?
Oh. I just wanted to see like your opinion on it, like what exactly how you want it.
Tara, coming up with the topic is one part of the assignment. So, and that is also was the problem for many of you, at least not many, but some of you, for assignment number 1. The selection of the pair of the articles was crucial for that assignment. And people who went the completely wrong way with the medical stuff did not do so well. So here's the same idea. The idea is that I'm not giving you the topic. You decide on the topic. So if you want my opinion, you should give me a bunch of examples and say, I'm thinking of this. Then I can tell you what I think. What I'm not going to do is to give you a topic.
Yeah, I was just confused by like.
Tell me exactly what you're confused about, and I can help you with that.
Like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, for instance, I don't know how to like people are saying, like younger kids who wear masks versus older people. Like, how would you distinguish between their age? Because somebody could look young, whereas another person could look old. And how would you know for a fact by just observing, I guess? Like, how would you know?
Think, that's why we studied variables, Tara. The problem is if you use age as a continuous variable, then you're in trouble because you're right. It's hard to say if somebody who's 25, whether this person is 25 or 40. Well, I'm exaggerating. But if you use age as a categorical variable and you say young people, somebody who is 25 and below, and old people, somebody who is 60 and above, then it's not that difficult, right? Because you're not going to ever take a 25-year-old for a 60-year-old, or vice versa. So the idea for this assignment that you're using 2 categorical variables, the ones that only have 2 values, young and old, yes and no, man or woman, but the connection between that variable, which we call the predictor variable, and the one that's the behavior has to be logical. That is, you can, like what Kim was saying, why would you expect women to be more compliant in wearing masks than men? There is no justification for that. For age, we could say that younger people are more adventurous or they're reckless versus older ones. So there is a justification. So you and Norma, you're here, right? You can talk to Tara. Good. So you guys exchange your phone numbers and talk. And then you can present me on Thursday, Tara. That would be a perfect time. You would say, Norma and I, maybe Jackie can join you. We have a couple of ideas, and then I can tell you. Okay?
Okay.
Vanessa, quickly, let's do you.
Thank you.
Computer froze. Observe people who are jogging, using bikes and casual walking. We want to see who causes the most disturbances. We are going to use bike and walk lanes. Interesting. So now you're looking at actual 3 values, Vanessa, right? You're saying people who jog, people who bike, and people who walk. That's not good because it's 3. We only want 2. So if you, let's say you're going to stick with the bike lanes, right? And say, we will observe whoever is on the bike lanes. That is, if somebody is biking, that's fine, right? If somebody is walking, that's not good.
Yeah.
So you need to now create the 2 variables, right? One is biking versus walking. And what kind of behavior are we going to observe in these people? So what is
So
the response variable?
I wanted to see if like a walk person ever like goes into the bike lane and disturbs like the biker, so causing the biker to stop, or like a biker goes into like the person's like walkway and causes like the walker to stop. That would be like causing a disturbance because it causes people like to stop and go over them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Have you tried any pilot observation for like 15 or 20 minutes?
No, I haven't yet,
Okay.
but I plan to. Yeah.
Okay, good. If you can do that between now and Thursday, and if you in 15 minutes see lots of that, what I can see in this setup is the way the bike lanes are designed, at least on Manhattan, that's what I'm familiar with, is that they are sort of in the road. So it's kind of hard for a pedestrian to sort of jump and go into the bike lane, right? Unless there are some, I don't know, garbage piled up on the sidewalk or whatever. I can tell you in Germany, the bike lanes are often on the sidewalk, but they are set in a different color, they're brown. And people who are not used to people biking, which in Germany is a big thing, a lot of tourists walk into these brown lanes, and then bikers get very annoyed. But that's because the bike lane is in the sidewalk.
I was planning on doing this in parks because some parks have like walkways and bikeways or like in the
Okay.
bridges. That's what I was
Okay.
planning on doing.
Okay. We need one park. Which one do you have in mind?
Oh, I was planning on doing a bridge.
Ah,
The Brooklyn
which
Bridge, yeah.
Brooklyn Bridge. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It might work if you do your quick pilot. Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
All right, guys, let's move on. Otherwise, keep your questions coming on Thursday. That's when we will do a lot of that stuff. Okay, where are we?
Miss Sakarina.
Okay, who am I talking to? Let's see.
Jasmine.
Hi, Jasmine. Okay.
Hi. After class, can me, Siva, and Rita please stay for a minute to
Yeah, sure.
ask you a question?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, let's see. Where are we? Okay. All right, let's do a little example, work with a little example. So here is this relatively old paper from 1997. Its title is Territorial Defense in Parking Lots. Retaliation against waiting drivers. Can somebody guess what the, I'm not necessarily hypothesis, but what the story is behind this article? I'm just giving you the title, nothing else. Can somebody guess what it's about? Well, let's take the first part, territorial defense in parking lots. What does that mean? People take their time driving out of parking space when they see a car waiting. Yes, interesting, good. That's precisely what it was.
Like stressing me out. I literally think she gave me a headache. Not headache, other one. I assume. The other one. Like I came home.
So there is a territory, right? Your parking spot. This was done in the mall in Georgia somewhere. You are in the mall, you decide that you're done shopping, you go to the parking lot. Now, this is what's going to happen. Let's see. But before we talk about the results, I want you to do a little, tiny little survey based on that. Oops, make it go full screen. Use your notebook, and I'm giving you 4 questions, and I'm asking you to fill out, where is that? This blank space at the end of each question using the scale. What will you do? If you're gonna do it faster, 1, 2, just as fast, 3, 4, 5, or slower, or more slowly, 6, 7. So I'm asking you to write 4 numbers and punch them into the chat for us. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Uh-huh. 7, 2, 2, 6, 4, 7. Okay. Uh-huh. Okay, interesting. So you get sort of different perception of what you will do versus what other people will do. Okay. Go on, everybody. Come on, there's 13 of you. And I see the responses from 3 people only. Okay, Thomas, 3746. 6. Okay, interesting. Thomas, you have a kind of a bimodal pattern. Victoria says 5767. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I want you to think about it for a second, right? Why would you do it slower? After all, you're leaving the mall. Don't you think if they honk at me and I'll stop driving, park again, get out and go shopping? Come on, Jeremiah. Who's got time for that? Interesting that the idea should be quite the opposite, right? If you're done shopping, you want to leave the parking lot as soon as possible. So why is it that you, many of you, say that it's going to be more slower? Why would you not hurry up and leave? Because you're done shopping. You don't need that spot anymore. Isn't that counterintuitive that people would be slower under the circumstances and somebody is there?
If someone is there, I wouldn't go so fast because
Go
they're
ahead, Jasmine.
there. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? No?
Or anybody else? Why is it? Sometimes I realize I forgot something. Okay, well, won't go so fast due to being careful. Mm-hmm. Mm. I feel like they're being rude if they honk to rush me out. So you want to teach them a lesson, huh, Norma? Ah, okay. So going back to the title of this paper, won't go so fast due to being careful. There is, even though this is a public spot and you have no more business in that mall and you want to go somewhere else, the fact that you control other people, that is, they're waiting for your spot and you sort of take your time now, is this territorial defense. And note that the word they're using in the subtitle is retaliation. They want to make sure that these people wait. A train, right? Good. But can somebody quickly, before I show you the results, so we still have time, think what would be other factors that would make the drivers who are leaving do it slower? And these are the factors you can observe, right? Because you're standing there. Passengers, right. So if you have passengers with you, will you be slower or faster? Well, Sierra, just think about it for a second. These people are with you. They all have to open the doors. They all have to settle into the car. Not just for safety, right? But because it just takes more time when you have passengers. Do you think gender plays a role if the person who is leaving is a man versus a woman? You have kids. And does it depend on who the driver is in the waiting car? Is it a man or a woman? Okay. All right. So this is what these people did. So this was just an idea how you would, remember I said your claim, your association claim for assignment 2 has to have a rationale. So these researchers conducted this little, very short survey to find out what people, because there are a couple of questions about each person and then a couple of questions of what they think about other people. They use that to then create the categories for the observation. And here is the table, right? So look at this carefully because you will need something like that for, that's a good question, Jeremiah. Why 7? Why not 6? Because you don't want fence sitting. If you give people 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you either slower or faster. And if you have an odd number, that number, well, odd number of categories, the number in the middle is the one that will give people some kind of a way of not being committed. So here is the table that they used. Neutrality, yes. This is parking lot. They only observed, I think, 54 parking lots. That's a lot, but not the entire garage. They had starting time, and that is when the driver opens the driver's side door, and they have end time when the front bumper clears the parking space, right? So how many seconds will it take? Then they also observed whether there was a car waiting for that spot. Yes, no, right? That's easy. That's a categorical variable with 2 values. They observed the gender of the driver who was leaving, a man or a woman. They also observed race, black, Asian, white, number of passengers that were with the driver. And then they had this interesting 2 variables. One had to do with assessment of the value of the car that's leaving, and the other one assessing the value of the car that was waiting. Because they said, think about it, this is not a personal space. You don't need to be there. You're leaving. Why would you resist? Why would you retaliate? Well, they thought, okay, maybe it's a status thing, the control thing. And obviously, if you have a posh car, I don't know, a Mustang or a Porsche versus beat up Nissan, you may be more likely to be arrogant and controlling. And if the car that's waiting is a humble car, maybe you'd be more likely to leave earlier to give these people space. Or if it is a posh car, you may want to punish them for being posh, right? So during the observation, they used this coding sheet to write down the information. So spot number 51, they started at whatever, and they left 20 seconds later. Was a car waiting? Yes, no. Was the driver man or woman? They wrote the race, if they could assess it. The number of passengers, that was easy. And approximately whether this is an expensive car in good condition or not so expensive car in not so good condition. So then you take this table and you put it in your Excel file, right? And that's what you will have to do too. I will teach you how to do that, but you have to have a table. Your table is going to be very simple, right? Yes, because you only have 2 variables with 2 values. You don't have the time because that's a continuous variable. We're not doing that. Gender as a possibility, but you have to justify it. Whether another car was waiting or not would be. So this gender, perhaps, let's say we were only looking at the connection. Let's get that. Association between gender and waiting. You would say female drivers are more likely to leave faster than male drivers when the car is waiting. Okay, so all the other stuff, right, is not even a part of our observation because we are not doing multiple variables the way these people did. Okay, so all you would need is this, the stuff, the 2 columns. Is it something you guys can relate to? Okay, so you will have to create your coding observation sheet. I have posted log sheets for you in assignment 2, but they are just for your writing down your actual involvement with observations. Am I giving you the results? I don't remember. No. Okay. So the results were, obviously, that interval between the start time and the end time varied from 10 seconds to 120 seconds. So some people really took time to get out. They left faster if there was no car waiting. There was no gender difference. There was a huge difference if there were passengers. People were much, much slower. And whether the car, I don't remember whether there was an effect of the waiting car, but there was an effect of the car that was parked. People who were driving more expensive cars were slower. So an interesting sort of take, and that's why the paper has this name. Okay, retaliation against waiting drivers, meaning that that was the most powerful effect that they observed, that when there was a car waiting, people were slower regardless of anything else. Okay, let's do another little, not a study, but a little exercise to see if you can uh, practice some of that. So here is an idea for us to practice. I will show you the observation plan next, so make sure you copy this down or take a picture of that or whatever you want to do. So here is our claim. Okay, the majority of CSI students eat unhealthy food. Now, again, this is in the times when we could actually go to, let's say, student union and observe people buying food. We can stand or sit next to the cashiers and see what people have on the trays. Our method is going to be observing students in the cafeteria. Our predictor variable, we have to think about it. And our response variable, whether students are eating or buying healthy or unhealthy food. So what would be the categorical predictive variable that predicts the type of food that the student will buy? So as you think about it, I'm gonna open up the observation plan. So now we can, work through the observation plan next. So start thinking. And this is our observation plan. Okay. If you have access to it on your computer or somewhere that you can open the observation plan, that'd be good. Otherwise, you can just watch the observation plan that I will open up for you in a second. Okay, share. Okay, so this is what we will have to discuss on Thursday, and I will have to approve it. You have your group number, your group members. That's okay. So now we are working through the pages. So the first question is, what is your idea? So in this case, we're working with the example of food in CSI cafeteria. So that's the idea. So we're just saying, okay, taking Kim example, we're looking at age and mask wearing. So this is just the very first step in our research flow chart, right? The top box. The next step is now we need to have an actual research question, right? So who can use the example of CSI cafeteria and try to formulate a research question? So it has to be a question. So the idea again is food type in the CSI cafeteria. Now I want a research question. Who can do that? Either unmute yourself or type in the chat, whatever you want to do.
Can we do how many students eat unhealthy food?
Okay, that is going to be a frequency claim, right? But let's do an association claim, which means we need to have two variables, right? We need the variable that will predict the behavior. So what could be that factor that predicts potentially whether people are going to buy healthy food or unhealthy food?
Could it be menu options? You know, the difference between the healthier choices and the unhealthier choices?
No, but you're not answering my question, Seaver. The question is, what is that factor? Now, eating healthy or unhealthy is the response variable. What is the predictor variable? So let me make it easy for a second. Let's say that I predicted gender makes a difference, that men eat more unhealthy food than women. Does it make sense? Is it a potentially good factor, gender?
You know, I think so because I'm thinking about the tall people at a gym. You know, it was very specific of changing of the weights or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like gender, making it specific with gender is a good predictor.
Okay. Does anybody else have any ideas in terms of gender? Seems to be murky. No, Vanessa, we are trying to figure out, so our response variable, the behavior that we will be observing is whether a person has healthy or unhealthy food on his or her tray. And the question is, what affects that choice? What is this predictor variable? Like I said, gender seems to be strange. Why would we expect men to eat more unhealthy food than women? So your idea, Vanessa, is not that good because you are putting the response variable in the place of the predictor variable, and that's not what we want. What else could affect person's choice of healthy versus unhealthy food? Come on, guys, you need to try, because that's what you'll have to do for your stuff. Can there be someone studies more, someone who's in the library more than another? Well, how will we see that? Remember, Tara, we are standing in the cafeteria. We don't know where the person was in the library or not in the library. By the people around them. So are you saying that if you go to the cafeteria, you're going to decide on what to buy because people are watching you? Well, then all of us will be very, very healthy. Availability, Vanessa, we are in the cafeteria. Think of the cafeteria in the student union, the one, is it 1C? Whatever that number is, right? The one that has frying stuff, salads, sandwiches, hot food. What else is there? It's all available. It's all there. Come on, guys. We are in the CSI cafeteria. We are watching people pay at the cashier. I have no idea. Okay, so gender is one potential predictive variable, that there will be an influence of gender, that women are more conscious than men. I don't particularly like that. Price. So Vanessa says price. Unhealthy food is cheaper than healthy food? Okay. Age. But you're all students. You all are approximately of the same age. There's some variability. No, I want the predictive variable, the variable that affects your choice of healthy or unhealthy food. Fried is the value of the response variable. I want the predictive variable, the one that affects the response variable. Full meals as opposed to. Stephanie, you're still in the response variable. I'm asking about the variable that affects the behavior. Somebody who is athletic, somebody who looks more athletic is more likely to buy healthy food. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Somebody who looks fit. I mean, how do we decide whether somebody looks fit? You know, muscles or whatever, lifestyle. We don't know. We are observing these people for 2 minutes as they're paying the cashier in the cafeteria. Culture. How can I observe culture, Jeremiah? What culture are you talking about? It's an observation. You can only say, I see that this person buys fried food because he doesn't look fit. So then looking fit or not looking fit is going to be the predictive variable, and the response variable will be salad versus pizza. The number of students is a frequency claim. We want an association claim. Oh, come on, guys. We want a simple categorical variable that has two values. One that will predict you buying healthy food. The other one will predict you buying unhealthy food. So athletic appearance, fitness is a possibility. Gender is also a possibility, but it's a little strange because why would we always think that all men will select unhealthy food, pizza, and all women will select healthy food, salad? What else can you observe in people that could predict their choice of food? You're looking at them. What do you see? Wait! Yes, Stephanie. Yes. Yes, Rita, obesity. So, of course, that's not perfect, but we can say that does weight, can't type today, predict or affect the choice of food? Okay. Now, thank you. Finally,
Can you
yay.
hear me?
I can hear you, Jasmine. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I think, yeah, weight could look good, but there are also people that are fit that weigh more than somebody who isn't. So wouldn't the appearance of them be more than the weight?
Okay,
Stephanie, you're right, but
yeah, we could say overweight, right? We can say that somebody who looks.
that has to do with the appearance.
Yes, because we can only do an observation. There's nothing else we can do. So
Okay.
now we want a research hypothesis, and the research hypothesis now is going to be the research question taken to a statement, and we will say that overweight people are more likely to buy pizza Who can finish that? What will be the second prediction? So now we have paired one value of predictive variable with another value of the response variable. Now we want the other pair. Who can do the other pair? Come on, come on, we have 4 minutes left. Who can do the other pair? So what would be the opposite of overweight? No, you switching the values, Thomas. I'm asking you to take the other value. So body weight is the variable. It has underweight or normal, right? Normal, I'm gonna abbreviate. Normal people are more likely to choose. Who can finish the sentence? Salad. Thank you, Rita. Okay, so that's the research hypothesis that consists of two parts. So what is our predictive variable? Okay, it's body weight. What are the levels? We just discussed them. Overweight by looking, of course. So somebody who has pot belly or whatever. And the second one is normal or healthy weight, whatever, right? What is the response variable? It's the choice of food, right? And what are the two values that we have come up with? Pizza and salad, right? Now we have to have a coding schema, right? That we will put into this table. And who will be our participants? Anybody who is going through the cashier in the next half hour, right? What is the location? That's the cafeteria and this particular cashier. What is the time? Well, we need the time when people eat. So between 12 and 2, I presume. And there are other things, right? So that's what you have to do for your observation plan. You have to come up with these two variables, connect them, first going through the idea, train station and masks, then coming up with the research question, coming up with two subparts of your research hypothesis. You can actually bring it into one. This is easy because you can see both. Identifying your variable, the predictive variable, the one that will affect a behavior that you're observing with two levels, right? And the response variable, its name, right? And its two levels. Okay. We'll do more of that on Thursday. So I know that Rita and Jasmine are staying with me. Anybody else who wants to stay and chat, do that. Otherwise, the class is over and I'll see you guys on Thursday with this observation plan in mind. Prepared even better. Okay. Stephanie and Jeremiah, good. So you guys stay too. Okay, Rita, Jasmine, do you guys want to put your, take care everybody, your mics on. Hey, Jeremiah. Okay, Jasmine, Rita, let's talk.
Yeah, 1 second. I just need to reach out to Seaver for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Hi.
Okay.
Hey, Jasmine.
Hi guys, how are you? So Seaver, let's talk about it in a
Let's
second.
talk about it.
Sure. Well, I actually was going to ask, or I was wondering, Jasmine, if you kind of wanted to lead us because I need to just get my thought together. I mean, pretty much it's about our idea, right? So I think, was it Kim earlier during the break that brought up the mask wearing. I think we all texted each other kind of nervous. That's what it is. Okay. Sorry, Jasmine. I didn't know how you necessarily wanted to start the chat
It's
with
not
Professor.
if you think that having the same idea will preclude one of you from doing this, that's not a problem for me. If you decide that you want to do something along the same lines, I'm game.
Oh, okay. It just worries us because we had gone into detail with what we wanted to do. So we were worried that it would be too similar to one another. But it was like,
It's
wait,
not a
we came
problem.
up with this.
It's not a problem. You will be observing it, doing your observation somewhere else, not in the same train station. So again, we could all do one observation as a class, but that's not that much fun. So don't worry about that. What worries me more about this idea is that the justification, the age will have a difference, I think might be a bit more of a problem, because I'm thinking if it is a train and older people are more likely to stay home these days, they're not going to be able to observe the age effect because they won't see enough of older people. That's, I think, is the problem.
Okay. We'll discuss this later in our group chat then.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
And
Sounds good, guys?
I thought maybe we could also, if we were nervous about the age demographic idea, I was thinking that we could also maybe do an observation on like the kind of disposable blue masks versus like N95 masks. You know, we can kind of measure the quality of masks if we wanted to leave the idea of age demographics. So I guess we could come into Thursday as prepared as we can be, and
Good.
maybe, you know, float
If,
some ideas.
if you guys had a few minutes between now and Thursday and go to your potential location for just a few minutes, you'll be surprised how much you'll learn from just doing your quick pilot observation in 15 minutes. So if you have, for example, ideas of different locations, you could do, each of you could do a few minutes in different locations, you will immediately see the results. That's the beauty of a pilot.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Definitely.
We just
Yeah.
wanted to
Okay,
reach
great.
out to you and
All
confirm
right.
everything.
Okay, I'll see you
Awesome.
guys on
All right.
Thursday.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
All
you.
right. See you guys
Stay
later.
safe.
All right,
Bye.
let's see. Who's next? Jeremiah, you are next, right? You and Stephanie, you're together, right, guys? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Stephanie. Tell me what you think.
We Jeremiah and I, okay, well, first of all, Sadiru has been like MIA, so we're just
Mhm.
kind of Jeremiah and I have kind of been going off of like what we feel would be good. So Jeremiah, did you want to explain kind of like
What you have in mind?
yeah. Your mic's not on.
Okay. Okay. Is it on now?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So for like the past week, I was collecting observations of how people react. Well, how people are individually and in groups in social settings and public settings. So like for the past week, I was going to Bay Ridge by Coney Island, and Central Park, and I've noticed that a lot of people don't really wear masks. Everyone's in the group, everyone's having picnics, and for the 1 hour I was at Central Park, I saw 5 weddings.
Mm.
But then as for surveys, I was thinking about we could do a survey on how people react to conflict and time, stress, and sleep connections, and then possible demographics.
That's too much. That's way too
Well,
much.
those are different topics.
That's what I'm saying. So if you want to do a survey, remember that because the way these survey platforms are designed, you can only have 10 questions max. So you need a topic, Jeremiah, Stephanie, and you will have to figure out what to do with Sadiro, because if you, let me for a second address that and then we'll come back to the idea. If Sadiro is not going to be a part of your group, he needs to know about that. Okay, he needs to be, you need to tell him and say, look, you're not working with us, but you don't know, maybe he was sick as well.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure because he hasn't been, I'm not sure if he was in class on Thursday, but
He wasn't.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I'll definitely text him in our group chat. And I'll reach out to
Yes.
him
So
tonight.
by Thursday, you have to tell me whether he's with you or not, because if
Okay.
he's not, then we'll have to try to rearrange groups yet again for the nth time. Anyway, so then if you go for a survey, you have to have a tight little question that you can address in 10 questions, like the pet interview that we did last time. Okay, if you have something global, something complex, you won't be able to do much in 10 questions.
Okay.
Okay.
So, in principle, like I said, I don't object to you guys having doing a survey. The problem is that each question is its own variable. So you will have to have this multiple analysis, which is time consuming and difficult, and may not lead you to anything. That's why, in a sense, doing observation is much easier, because you're only working with two variables, two values each. So maybe, Jeremiah, you and Stephanie could talk about what you saw. Perhaps, I don't know, I'm trying to rearrange your ideas. Perhaps the question is, are people more likely to wear masks in a group versus individually? Or it could be actually the other way around. You could say, well, you're in the group, you're almost always now in the group of people you know, right? And people you know are your bubble, and you don't need to wear a mask with them. When an individual person walking by himself or herself would wear a mask, because that person is in the wild. So that is the problem, because you can sort of flip these variables depending on, we can't have a ironclad justification for predicting one pattern or the other.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
See what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right, guys. Then I'll
So
see you Thursday.
we'll talk about it like amongst our group chat. I actually just texted Sadiru to see if everything was okay, and he said yeah. So I'll write in our group chat tonight, and we'll figure it out, and we'll talk on Thursday.
Good. Okay, I'll see you Thursday, and I'll talk to Vanessa.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Vanessa, unmute yourself.
Hello. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, like, what would be considered like a good number? So, like, what's too low and what's too?
It's very easy, Vanessa. It's 10 people
10
per
people?
person. Yeah.
Okay.
So your group has 3, right?
So 30, right?
30 observations. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. See you Thursday.
See you Thursday.